Let's talk about something that a lot of people don't like talking about. It's our least favorite thing in this hobby. Let's talk about what to do when your fish dies. Hey, listen, I don't care how good of a fish keeper you are, fish are going to die, and there's nothing you can do about that. Anybody that you talk to that tells you they've never had a fish die, if they've been keeping fish for longer than a few months, run from that person and never speak to them again because they are a liar and you should not listen to anything they ever say. Fish die, it's part of the deal. It sucks, but it is what it is. But what are you going to do about it once that happens? Now, I got to be honest with you. I have been keeping fish on and off for over 30 years. I have dealt with my share of fish dying. And it's happened so much over those decades that I'm kind of desensitized to it. Now, there are some situations where a particular fish of mine dies and it breaks my heart because I had it for a long time and it was a special fish to me. All of these would fall in that category. It'll be a sad day when those die, but I got a tank full of 60 yellow labs. I don't know every single one of those fish in there. When I come in here in the rare occasion that one of them has passed, it's not something that I completely freak out over and all of a sudden cancel my plans. I'm done. We have to have a funeral. We have to do all this. No, it's just like, okay, well, that sucks, but let's move on. But you might be somebody that has one aquarium. You have a beta tank and maybe your beta is sick and that's why you're watching this because you're like, oh no, what am I going to do when that fish dies? If this fish is your lone fish and it keeps you company while you're sitting at your desk or whatever it is and you feed it every day and hand feed them, it's a special pet for you. You're going to take this a lot more seriously than I would if one of my yellow labs were to pass. Don't misunderstand me. One of the yellow labs passes, I'm upset about it, but it's not the kind of thing that's going to wreck my day like your beta passing if that's the only fish that you have, or maybe you only have a few and you lose one of them. That's going to be a big deal. What should you do? We've got a few suggestions for you, starting off with the one everybody knows, so we might as well let Lisa talk to you about it. I don't know why I chose Lisa to talk about this one, but I don't know.
Okay, so I have to say toilet. The reason why I'm bringing up the toilet is because I think everybody at one point in time has flushed their fish down the toilet. Understand this. I don't think it's a good idea. I think that flushing your fish down the toilet, if it was a fish that you really loved, it's kind of cruel if you think about it. That's where you go to the bathroom. You're gonna be like doing things in the toilet. And to me, I think it would be better to stick that fish in a bag and put it in the trash, not in your house, in a dumpster somewhere, than to flush it down the toilet. Fish decompose, and if they are decomposing in your septic system, they're just rotting, and it's sitting in your septic system rotting. Not only that, did it even make it to the septic system? What if that fish was too big and it got caught in the plumbing somewhere or whatever, and you had to plunge it? That's disgusting. That's just gross. And not only that, what if that fish had a disease? You're putting that in your water. You know, I know you're flushing it, but things live on the inside of your toilet. And yeah, maybe you should clean it more often, but disease, it lives in there. It lives down in the pipes, and that's pretty gross. Now let's just say, well, Lisa, I don't have a septic system. My fish would go to the wastewater plant somewhere. Okay, well, more than likely, the chemicals that they use are going to kill whatever disease that the fish had had. If it had a disease, it could have just died of natural causes. And that's fine, whatever. But I really think the best thing to do is one of the other options we're giving you and not use the toilet. And if you can come up with another reason why you shouldn't use the toilet, please leave it in the comment section below.
Now, the next option is one that in some situations, you really have to do this. I've been in this situation a couple of times. It's no fun, but you got to do what you got to do. We've actually done this quite a bit, and that is to bury the fish as you would any pet. Sometimes you kind of have to. There's been a lot of fish that we've had that have passed that we had no choice. We either had to throw them in a dumpster, which is barbaric and horrible. We've not done that, by the way. I'm just saying your options would be throw it in the dumpster, maybe take it and throw it in a lake and let the fish that are in there eat it. Again, don't do that. That's just horrible. I mean, yeah, you can make the argument circle of life, but I'm just saying I wouldn't do that. If I had a large fish, like I have had in the past, that pass away, I will bury those fish. Now, if you live in an apartment, obviously this is not something that you're going to be able to do. Lisa's going to give you an alternative in the next bit, but me, I've got almost 5 acres here, and we have a little place that I selected because we had one of our koi pass. This was like 7 or 8 months ago. It was one of those things where that fish got sick and the next day it was dead. It was bizarre. I don't know what happened, but it happened and it sucked. And that's a big fish. That was like a 24-inch fish. Certainly can't flush that one down the toilet, and I'm absolutely not going to throw it in the dumpster or anything like that. So I picked a spot in my yard and I buried that fish. I put it down probably a good 2 feet into the ground because digging here is easy. I live in an area where it's all very sandy soil, very easy digging, but I got it down in there. I wrapped it up and I put it in the ground and I buried it. Did not put a headstone or anything like that, but I know where that fish is, and it was very sad. I did that because there was no other right way to do it. I mean, we had to dispose of this fish. I'm not going to burn it. I'm not going to throw it in the dumpster. I'm not going to, got to bury it. If you don't have a space in your yard that you can do this, maybe there's a space at your mom's place or your uncle's place, or I don't know. Maybe somebody will let you, who knows? Maybe there's a pet cemetery. There are those. I don't know. I'm just saying there are options for where you can put that fish in the event that you don't have a yard yourself. I actually did that one time with a dog. This was back in like 2013. Lisa and I were renting. I did not want to bury the dog on a property that we were renting because then we would leave and that would just be bad. So I actually buried that dog in the backyard. I didn't do it because I was brokenhearted and I was in bed for 2 days. But Lisa and the kids and my brother-in-law buried that dog at my sister's property, which was 12 acres at the time. And they have since divorced, but he still lives there. But anyway, that was what we did there. They had a little spot where they had buried a dog, and we put our dog there next to their dog. And it was horrible, but she was there. And I didn't just dispose of her. I gave her a proper burial. It was a dog that I had had for 13 years, so it made sense. And if you have a fish that you've had for many, many years, it makes sense to do that. Give them a proper burial. And, you know, in the case of a 24-inch koi, it's really your only option, because where else are you going to put that?
One of the options I like when a fish passes away is to bury it in a planter bed or even one of your houseplants. Why? Because fish have so much nutrients in them. Back in the day, the Native Americans, they would plant a fish in their crops. They would plant it with a seed, and then they would have these amazing crops, and they did that for years. That's what they believed in. And you know what? If you've ever done it in your garden, if you've ever done it in, put a fish way down deep, super deep in your planter pot, then you'll know that those plants, those flowers, they thrive, and you'll have a beautiful plant in a beautiful garden. It's just another way of, I don't know, continuing the circle of life.
Now, this next one is not really a way to dispose of a fish, although I guess it kind of could be. But what I want to help you with here is giving you a little bit more time to figure out what you're going to do. Here's what I mean. It's 9 o'clock at night and you have a fish pass, and it's I don't mean to keep pointing to these fish because that's just mean, but it's a big fish and you don't know what you're going to do. You don't know how you're properly going to dispose of this fish. There's a real easy way to take care of that fish to give you more time to figure out what you're going to do. It might sound horrible, but that would be to put that fish in the freezer. Put it in a large bag, maybe even, say a trash bag might sound barbaric, but a bag that you can put the fish in, or even a small container or something like that. If you have one big enough for that fish, put them in there and freeze the fish. The fish is already dead, so it doesn't care. It's not going to hurt them. And it's going to put it in that state where you can figure out what you're going to do. Because otherwise, I'm not going to lie to you. When you have a dead fish that's large, it doesn't take long for that fish to stink so bad. We all know the smell of dead fish, don't we? If you don't, have you been outside? I mean, dead fish smell, well, they smell like dead fish, and it's horrible. And it will happen very, very fast with a large fish. Like that koi I talked about in my last segment, that fish would have stunk real bad, real fast. If I couldn't do anything right away with that fish, it would have made sense to freeze it, although I don't think that fish would fit in my freezer. But anyway, maybe you have a deep freezer, maybe you have enough room to where you can put it in there. At least what's happening is that fish is there. It's not going to be stinking up your entire house. It's not going to make you rush to make a decision of what you're going to do. Maybe you do want to drive to your sister's place and bury that fish in her backyard, and she lives an hour away, and you're not going to be able to go there till Sunday. That's fine. Don't just wrap it up and put it outside, because your neighbors are not going to like you very much. The bugs will like you, but the neighbors won't. No, just put it in the freezer, and that way, when the time comes, you can take that and do what you need to do with it. I have heard of people doing this even with very small fish, betas, guppies, but it's a special fish to them. They don't want to make a quick decision of what they're going to do. They don't want to put it in their flower pot. Like Lisa suggested, this fish is too special to them. They want to figure things out, so they stuck it in the freezer and froze it. And that is a perfectly acceptable way to do it. Again, the fish is already dead. So, I mean, who cares? I don't mean to say it like that, but really, like, it's not like it's painful for the fish.
There is the option of burying the fish in the substrate. I'm not talking about an Oscar or even like, a Plecostomus or some huge fish. I'm talking about something more like, I don't know, your beta fish or neons, something very small. If you have a heavily planted tank with a very deep substrate, you can take that little teeny fish and you can stick it way down deep in that substrate. And I mean all the way down there, because you don't want other fish to get to it, or snails or anything like that. And you don't want that dead fish to contaminate your water and have some kind of huge problem. That would be terrible. But if you take that itty bitty tiny fish and you stick it very, very deeply down into that substrate, you will be helping your plants thrive. And that is a natural fertilizer. And I personally have done that. I did it with an African cichlid, but I didn't have any fish in the tank when I did that. It was kind of like a, I don't know, I was doing an experiment. And my my plants, they just grew and they took off and they did wonderful. And once I knew that that aquarium was 100% cycle and I had it running for a few months, I put my fish in there. So again, that's another option. But to be clear, if you have no live plants in your tank, I do not recommend to do this. You don't want to stick it in an African cichlid tank down in your sand with absolutely no plants in there, because what's that going to do? Nothing. It's not even an option.
All right, so listen, fish die. It sucks, but it's part of the deal. If you're going to keep a glass box full of water and you're going to put fish in there, eventually you are going to deal with fish death. It's the worst part of this hobby, but it is what it is. Hopefully now you have a few ideas of what you can do to resolve that. Some of them are completing that circle of life. Some of them are giving them proper burials or whatever it is. I hope that this makes you feel a little bit better. And what I will tell you to wrap this whole thing up is, know what you're going to do. Make a decision now. Even if you just bought your fish, make a decision of what you're going to do. If you live in an apartment and you can only keep aquariums of a certain size, don't buy fish that are going to be too large for you to dispose of. You get this fish that's 8 inches long, you live in an apartment, what are you going to do? Don't put yourself in that situation. Instead, get fish that you can deal with if things happen. I hope you don't have to deal with that very much, but if you do, now you have a better idea of ways that you can take care of that problem and hopefully not have to deal with it again for a very long time. Anyway, I don't want to talk about death anymore. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week.